Welcome back to New Realities. This is another program that is here to promote the amazing upcoming conference in Sedona, the Sedona Ascension Retreat.
Welcome back.
And coming up March 14th, there it is on the screen, March 14th to the 16th, 2025. Suzanne Ross is joining me and is the producer of the event. Suzanne, talk about the event just a little bit.
Thanks so much, Alan. It's so great to be back on New Realities TV. Getting so excited. We're only about 5 months out now from our March Sedona Ascension Retreat. And yes, it is our 10th anniversary celebration, and we are going to celebrate. You know what we're going to celebrate, Alan, is a new humanity uniting and a new earth arising, because we all know we're in a time of a great shift into a new way of living, being together in unity. So we're all going to be focusing on that during this event with luminaries like Darryl Anka, Billy Carson, Robert Edward Grant, Adam Apollo, William Henry, Sarah Breastman Cosme, Aaron Self, Mark Anthony, and Ann Tucker, all of these great luminaries who are really bringing in this new humanity, new earth, arising consciousness.
And our guest today, our very, very special guest today. Let's go back to the full screen. And here we are with Mark Anthony and Rocky, his agent, would you say? Mark, great to have you back on the show again. And you're going to be talking about the science of reincarnation. What was the subtitle?
The subtitle of the science of reincarnation is, Who Were You Before You Were You? And this could be a really great presentation. My last two books, Evidence of Eternity, delved very heavily into reincarnation. And my most recent book, The Afterlife Frequency, won the cover award for Best Book on Reincarnation. Along with it won Inspirational Book of the Year through Ohm Times and Book of the Year by Best Holistic Life magazine. And so what I'm going to do is explain how my electromagnetic soul theory is the basis for understanding the reality of reincarnation. And I just caution everyone not to expect a dry or boring lecture. I promise it won't be like watching algebra on stage, okay? I want to not only explain how this is possible, but I'm going to be giving 5 case studies that ought to rock your metaphysical world.
I love this subject because I always thought there has to be a science to reincarnation, and this would do away with a lot of religious dogma that has replaced the science. So what is it, I guess, to start with, that is actually incarnating? What is that? And coming into the body, taking on form, but who are we before we were we? I guess I'm asking you.
Well, every great religion teaches us that the who and what we are. In faith, we call this a soul or a spirit. In scientific realms and in the psychological field, we refer to it as consciousness. And that is the energy, who we are. And every great belief system teaches us that the soul, the spirit, pre-exists the body, comes into the body, and moves on after the body dies. We know from the laws of thermodynamics and physics that energy is neither created nor destroyed, only transferred from one form to another. Without giving away too much, my electromagnetic soul theory, the EMS, explains how the brain does not create the soul, the consciousness. It merely hosts it the way your computer hard drive hosts the programs on it. And I know that Suzanne is an expert in Buddhism, and this aligns with Buddhism and Hinduism. And a lot of people think that reincarnation is strictly like a Hindu or a Buddhist concept, but it isn't. It's actually at the root of all the world's major religions. And I'll be touching upon that as well. And so the who and what we are not only comes into this body temporarily, but when we physically die, it moves on. And based on the science and on the various belief systems that adhere to reincarnation, we live through a series of incarnations. Let's look at it very simplistically. We have one life, but it's eternal. And so we come in and out of this material world, and then we come into the material world, into a physical body, and then after that we leave and go to another dimension. And so there is a period of transition between incarnations. And what's really fascinating is that some people naturally remember their prior lives, but pretty much everybody will be able to access their prior lives through what is known as PLR, which is past life regression therapy.
So there's a whole argument about when the soul actually comes into the body. Is it fully in when the baby's born? What's your opinion about all that? And there's so much more to talk about. And Suzanne, please jump in, or Rocky, hi. Anytime. But that's a question a lot of people argue about.
It really is, and that opens up a whole can of political and religious worms, without a doubt. Because when does the soul enter the body? And I know that, and I avoid politics, okay, but there's a big political discussion about, well, if the soul enters the body, then is this a person, and how does abortion factor into all of this? And that is the debate. When does the soul enter the body? Now, as a psychic medium, I communicate with spirits, people who've passed on, and many times I will be doing a reading, and the soul of a baby that died either in utero or right after physical birth will come through. And sometimes I will be around a pregnant woman, and I'll pick up on the spirit of the baby who's saying, like, hey, I'm around. So I think that when the energy, the EMS, attaches to the fetus, happens pretty early, in right after conception. But I don't know if we have the technology just yet to determine that. I'm sure that we, at this point in time, don't have the technology, but I believe at some point we will.
Interesting.
I remember watching, because if you've seen some of these movies or documentaries, I should say, about Beyond and Back or Ghost Inside My Child, that are actually on the History Channel and Science Channel, Discovery Channel. And so the Ghost Inside My Child are all of these children who clearly remember their last life. And then their parents are actually going on Google and finding these individuals whom they're describing very specifically, who they were, what their name was, what they were involved in. And I remember one episode, this little boy who had remembered a past life as being a soldier in Vietnam, but they asked him about coming in this life. And it was kind of funny because he seemed kind of frustrated with the adults asking him, and he was like, okay, you're on the other side with God. You choose your parents. God pushes you out of a window. You come in through your mommy's head and into her tummy. It's just very cute. But yeah, their recall is incredible, some of these young children.
Well, Rocky, she's here. Rocky Trainer is my manager and business manager, and she travels with me on my tours and adventures. And Rocky has a very interesting story. When she was about, I think about 20, and she was in Spain at Alhambra. Rocky, can you briefly give us your story about that?
Well, being a young teen and just all excited about being in Europe for the first time and being a dancer, I went to Alhambra because I thought a ballet dancer was going to be doing a performance there, which was closed. So the next day, it was Nureyev. And so I was like disappointed I couldn't see him. However, I walked the property, and as I walked to a veranda, I all of a sudden had this incredible deja vu that I had been there before. And I walked through the hallways and I knew where the baths were. I knew where, and the surgeon couldn't believe that I knew this stuff because it was actually just being recovered by archaeologists and people that were looking at this piece of property. But then I gazed up out on the view and I saw these caves. And that's where I remembered all of these gypsies lived. So I'll leave it there, but it was quite a revelation for me to know my way through the palace itself and knew what was there and what wasn't there in the present time.
See,
Wow.
what Rocky's describing, a lot of people will visit a place and suddenly, as she described, have a deja vu, like you know where things are. Sometimes you may be drawn to particular periods in time. Sometimes you will have a particular talent or a skill that just seems to come naturally. You may have memories of a place, and this is not an unusual phenomenon. Many people have exhibited this for thousands of years, and these very well may be symptoms, if you will, of reincarnation.
Well, what exactly is the soul? I mean, your science shows you what is this thing you're calling the soul that incarnate? Is it an electromagnetic frequency? It's a conscious, it's a plasma field. I mean, what could you say? Yeah.
My EMS theory explains that everything in the physical universe is made of molecules. And we know that. We know that from science. And what's fascinating about science is it's divided basically into two fields, physical physics, the science of inorganic matter, which would be physics, chemistry, engineering. And then there's the life sciences, biology, microbiology, ecology, zoology. But what's fascinating is everything in both sciences, it's agreed, is composed of molecules. Molecules, in turn, are made of atoms. And then past the atomic level, when you get down to the subatomic level, everything is composed of electrons, protons, and neutrons, which in turn are made of a smaller particle known as a quantum, which is pure electromagnetic energy, ergo the term quantum physics. And it is on the subatomic level where the distinction between physics and the life sciences disappears, because everything in our material universe, and that means that the four of us, in fact, everyone listening, your body, the chairs you're sitting in, the radio waves that this show is being broadcast on, the rings of Saturn and beyond, are all made of the same energy, which is a quantum. And I know that people say, well, that's really hard to wrap your head around. And it's like, you think? I mean, it did take Albert Einstein, Max Planck, Werner Heisenberg, Louis de Broglie, Robert Oppenheimer to figure this out. But now we know that everything on the subatomic level is made of electromagnetic energy. We know that the brain, through the field of neuroscience, has an electrical field. And we know that the brain did not create the electrical field, it merely hosts it. So the electromagnetic soul, the EMS, is a coherent quantum field that when we physically die, think of your body as a drop of water, and that drop of water leaves and then plunges into the eternal sea of consciousness that I refer to as the collective consciousness. And so your soul is then interconnected with other spirits, interconnect with other spirits. I know Suzanne's nodding because that's what the Buddhists have believed. That's what the Hindus believe. And quite frankly, that is what the Christians believe. It's just that different cultures, they add their cultural nuances and flavor to it. The Buddhists have a very fascinating way of looking at consciousness as an eternal stream, and that life is a stream of energy which flows through us, around us, and beyond us. So to answer your question directly, Alan, the soul is a coherent electromagnetic field. And the reason I say coherent is that recent studies in the past couple years have demonstrated that consciousness survives physical death. In other words, when you die, you take you with you.
Mm.
Well, something that came to me when you were talking about rejoining the collective field is in a lot of these near-death experiences. And I'm reminded of Rob Gentle at our event in March, Mark, right? And he wrote that book, Quarks of Light. And you're talking about quantum physics and the subatomic particles reduced down to quarks. And rejoining that collective field, many people who retell experiences of, having died and come back, talk about joining that field and how suddenly they have omni awareness of everything that's going on all at once, including seeing their mother in New York on the phone, seeing their sister in California, at church or whatever it might be. They have this omniscience suddenly when they're on the other side. They may come back and have a memory of that. But I love the near-death experiences because it's kind of proof. Right.
It does, Suzanne, and that's a really great point that you bring up, because for thousands of years, there have been tales of resurrections where people have died and then they came back to life, and they talk about going through a tunnel into the light and encountering deceased loved ones. And so for the past 50 years, we have subjected this phenomenon to the scientific method of objective analysis and observation. And in the past couple years, due to advances in scientific technology, being able to measure brain waves and the energy flow throughout the body, not only does it appear that our soul is a coherent electromagnetic field, but that when it leaves the body, it stays coherent and consciousness survives physical death. So it's really, we live in an exciting time. And that's one of the beauties of the Sedona Ascension retreats, is because not only myself, but several of my colleagues, you have a very diverse array of experts who will be presenting various topics to help people understand that the afterlife, spirit communication, reincarnation, near-death experiences, it's not hocus pocus, it's not magic, but it is based on sound scientific principles. And due to the introduction of the scientific method, started by Dr. Raymond Moody back in 1975, when he coined the term near-death experiences, we now have a scientific basis for understanding all of this.
That is so good. That is so important as we come into this age of consciousness. This is the sort of science that can bring the rest of the world who's stuck in a kind of materialistic, mechanistic view of reality into this other realm. But one question I have, and I don't know any way to actually prove what I'm going to ask here, is that the soul dips in and out of the physical realm, but in each dipping, there must be a frequency shift that happens to the soul, right? There must be an upgrade or a learning or an evolution. But how would you even know that or measure that? But what do you think?
I don't know if we can measure it at this point, but for people that undergo past life regression therapy, what they do, what PLR is, it's hypnosis. And the therapist, and for anyone listening, if you're going to undergo PLR, please make sure you go to a credentialed and reputable psychotherapist. All right, not some fly by night. Hey, I do past life. Make sure you go to somebody who's clinically not only trained but has the credentials. And what happens with PLR is people are hypnotized and then they're brought back to a pre-birth state, pre-birth here, and oftentimes you will hit upon or find memories from a prior lifetime, but not just one lifetime, but several. And that's what's so fascinating. And it appears that our soul is more than just one energy. I mean, it is one energy field, but it has multi-dimensional characteristics. So yes, while our soul's, housed in our brain, energetically, it is still linked to the collective consciousness. And so that even though, like right now, you're Suzanne Ross, you know, you're Alan, you're Rocky, within the depth of your electromagnetic soul, you carry the memories of several lifetimes. And that's why, we were talking about earlier, some people, maybe you pick up a guitar and you can just play it really well, or you're really adept at math, or you have a knack for languages. Like with me, there's certain periods of history. My hobby's Egyptology, or one of my hobbies is Egyptology. And recently at the Ancient Mysteries Conference at Edgar Cayce Center in Virginia Beach, I was discussing the discovery of the tomb of Tutankhamun and the mysteries and the curse and all that. And it was really great because Egyptologists are coming up to me going, well, how many times have you been to Egypt? The way you describe it, it's like you've been there. And it's like, well, I haven't been there yet, at least in this world, but I have been there, if that makes sense. There's something about, and I know that everyone's like, oh, you know, ancient Egypt, but that's not the only culture that I gravitate to. There are several, but that's one of them. So because I meet people all the time that say, you know, I have this thing for the Old West, or I have this thing for the mountains of Central Asia, or wherever, and they just have such a an affinity, a connection to that. And I think that's more than just a hobby or a passing interest. I think this is a very visceral thing, and I believe that these are carryovers of prior incarnations. And Alan, with your expertise in UFOs, okay, there's a lot of people that have these past life memories that are not here on planet Earth. Okay,
Well,
that's even more fascinating, I think.
well, that was Dolores Cannon's whole thing, the QHHC. I mean, what do you think of that? That's a whole approach to access those other lives. I mean, it's different than maybe the regular past life. But do you have any opinion? Not to, you know, judge it, but I'm just curious where you come from.
Well, as a medium, I'm an evidential medium, and what that means is the information that I bring through from spirits and I present to the recipient has to be something that they can verify. And
Right.
occasionally, I've done readings for several people who claim to have been alien abductees. And it's really fascinating. Yes, I know you're one of them. And what it is, the spirits connected to those people, like your relatives in spirit, will bring forth information that is very relevant about the abduction experience. Okay. Now, when people start, and that can be verified by you, which adds the authenticity and the sincerity to the reading. But when you're doing work with reincarnation, it's one thing if somebody says, okay, I'm getting this feeling that I lived in India in the 1930s, and they start describing it, and those things can be verified. If you start saying that, well, I come from, you know, a planet orbiting a binary star that's 9,000 light years from here, that from a curiosity standpoint, that's very interesting, but we can't verify it factually. I'm not saying that it isn't a legitimate memory, but it doesn't fit the evidential standard. Not only am I a medium, I'm also an attorney. I've worked as a trial attorney. I've tried over 100 jury trials, handled over 6,000 clients in my career. And evidence is key. And what makes things credibility, and that's one of the things that I like about Sedona Ascension retreats, is the level of credibility. Suzanne's really, you have done such a great job of picking credible people, because when you start getting into the, I see sprites and fairies and bunnies and unicorns and all this, it tends to denigrate and detract from the seriousness of what we do.
That's what they call woo, woo, woo. We're not that, but it would be great, Suzanne, maybe to have a panel about reincarnation with Sarah Bresman Cosme and Mark Anthony and maybe Vincent Janet. I don't know. It just came to me to have these different ways of talking about it. It's up to you, but
We're having a great guest panel on
Oh,
Friday night. And I'm sure Mark is part of it, and the people that you mentioned
yes.
are all part of it. And I'm basically just calling it quantum consciousness so the conversation can go anywhere, right? But thank you so much for recognizing that, Mark. I really am drawn to spiritually inspired, scientifically minded experts in different fields who are highly intellectual, very intelligent, research-based enthusiasts, right? So I agree with you wholeheartedly that you want to be compelling in such a way that will inspire and empower others, and at the same time give them information that's legitimate, that can be verified. And so, yeah, I'm very much into that. Alan knows I have a TV
Yeah.
network I created, sci-spy.tv, merging science and spirituality. So, yes, I'm very much into how they support one another, improve one another. It's interesting you were talking about evidential medium, because Sedona Transcendence Retreat we just had a couple months ago in September here. We had a couple of evidential mediums, Vincent Jenna being one of them. And it was really fascinating, Mark, how they were giving proof of who was coming through for the people in the audience.
Yeah,
Very legitimate, evidence that
exactly.
the
Yeah,
spirit was speaking through them for them.
yeah. Then that's what I do. And you've got to bring forth, look, if you say to somebody, "Oh, your grandmother's here and she baked cookies and she loves you." I mean, come on. Everybody's grandmother baked cookies, and unless you're a real stinker, your grandmother loves you, all right? Because that's what grandmothers do. But when you start giving facts and evidence, for example, I was doing a reading for a woman recently, and her grandfather came through, and I described him and how he passed, and she said yes. And I said, somebody else just came in who's right next to him. And I hesitated. She goes, "Well, why are you hesitating?" I go, "He looks like Walt Disney." I go, "This guy really looks like Walt Disney." And she said, "Well, my grandfather worked with Walt Disney. He was an animator in Disney Studios back in the 1920s. And I'm like, how cool is that? I'm talking to Walt Disney. But the thing is, her grandfather had the connection to Walt Disney. One of the reasons I brought that story up is because one of Disney's most incredible achievements was a movie called Fantasia, which was it's a music in the 1960s. They used to call it the trip with no after effects. And Walt Disney, for a period of his life, lived in Sedona, Arizona, and was very much influenced by Native American spirituality. And some people, and I'm not saying this, so if any of the Disney families listening, but there are rumors that he may have, through Native American connections, experimented with peyote, and that influenced his creation of Fantasia.
Wow.
Well, that's where
I
Thunder Mountain came from at
is
Walt
it?
Disney World.
Yeah, think
Oh,
about it.
oh,
Thunder Mountain, when you look at it, it looks like a mountain in Sedona. It's got that orange mountain, and
there
because one of the
is a
facts.
Thunder Mountain there in Sedona. It's actually called Thunder Mountain.
That's right.
Oh, there you go. And see, one of the things about Sedona is it is considered one of the most beautiful places on Earth. And once you're there, you'll see why. It's also the home to, I believe, 5 major energy vortexes and several smaller vortexes. A vortex, think about it in an energetic form as a whirlpool. All right. We know a whirlpool in the sky is a tornado, a whirlpool in water. You can see it in your bathtub or in the ocean. God forbid you're never on a boat encountering a whirlpool. But there are electromagnetic fields. There are certain plants in Sedona which grow in this corkscrew type fashion, which are found nowhere else. And scientists, botanists believe that it may be due to the electromagnetic fields there. For over 13 centuries, Native Americans have revered Sedona as a sacred place. In the modern era, it's become an epicenter for people involved in metaphysics and spirituality. And Suzanne, I'm sure that's one of the reasons that you've chosen Sedona as the location for the Sedona Ascension Retreat. And I love the name, Sedona Ascension, because what we're doing is it's ascending, it's raising spirituality in the energetic sense. And what better place to do this than Sedona?
And
Wow.
the scientific proof, right, behind the electromagnetic fields that are spiraling here. So I got involved in hosting tours for people who were coming in from out of town for a spiritual experience. But I wasn't going to tell anybody there were vortexes unless I personally knew there was evidence, scientific evidence, for the existence of these spiraling electromagnetic fields. There's a gentleman here who was an engineer who came here to actually disprove the vortex and ended up proving it, and now has a website, SedonaAnomalies.com, with hundreds of pages of scientific evidence supporting the existence of this spiraling electromagnetic field that literally comes from the spinning iron core of the inner earth and then spirals up through this crystal bed, because Sedona does have a proven crystalline basement, and that's written in the U.S. Geological Study. So we know that the spiraling field does exist, and what are the effects? Neuroscientists have come here and they have measured the effects on the brain, which actually shifts the brain into the states that you would experience in deep meditation. And so with the neuroscientific and the geologic evidence, I can comfortably say, yes, not only are the vortexes real, but they have an actual influence on your level of consciousness.
I'm sorry, Alan, go ahead.
No, and I was just going to add, and probably the soul, if the soul is electromagnetic and Sedona is electromagnetic, there must be a kind of alchemy that happens. But you go ahead, Mark.
I couldn't agree more, Alan. As usual, you hit the nail right on the head with that. And for people who question that, well, what are magnets? What metal are magnets made out of? Iron. And when iron rusts, what color does it turn?
Well, it's because our blood is red for the same reason that there's iron. When you're anemic, you're missing iron.
Right. And the color of all the mountains in Sedona are orange and red. In other words, everywhere you look in Sedona, you're surrounded by iron, which is the conduit for this electromagnetic energy. And like you said, it's like an amplifier. It's an amplifier, and that's why when people go to Sedona and they explore the vortexes, and sometimes it's just as simple as just relaxing, taking in the view. There's always hummingbirds, very spiritually significant creatures. You can't go wrong by coming to the Sedona Ascension Retreat. You're going to get so much out of it on an emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual level, and you're going to have fun too.
Absolutely.
And I can vouch for your presentation. Sorry, Alan.
No, I just want to say one more thing. Oh, go ahead, Suzanne.
Really great. They're really fun. They're not. There is some science in there, but you got a great sense of humor, and everyone just loves your presentations. They're animated. They're exciting. They're compelling.
Yes, and one more thing I wanted to add to iron is that iron attracts oxygen. So you're in an oxygen-rich environment when you're in Sedona. Rocky,
Visually, excuse me, visually, when you come around on the highway, coming in from Phoenix, coming in, Mark and I every time go, oh my God, look what we're seeing, look what we're feeling, and it's drawing us close. And everyone who goes to the Sedona Ascension Retreat will be so thrilled of the venue, because when you step outside, you are surrounded by exquisite beauty of the magic of Sedona. And then what happens at the retreat is enriching and elevates what you are experiencing and who you are as an individual soul. That's what I felt when I walked away.
That's
It was amazing.
Rocky and I were trying to keep track of how many times we said, "Oh my God!" Every time we go back, "Oh my God!" And then we were trying not to do it, and we went around another. I'm driving around another corner, and then there's this other view, and we both said, "Oh my God!"
Well, that's why we invite everyone watching to come to the Sedona Ascension Retreat, March 14th to the 16th, 2025. Mark Anthony will be there. Robert Edward, there's the poster. Bashar, who's coming, always packs it in. Billy Carson, Robert Edward Grant, Adam Apollo, William Henry, Sarah Brexman Cosme, Adam Abke, Ann Tucker. She's amazing with her predictions for what's coming from the angels. Mark Anthony, of course, Vincent Janet. What else you want to say about this, Suzanne? Because it's an incredible conference.
Well, our conference always includes indoor workshops, so you can have a one-on-one interactive experience with your favorite spiritual teacher. You can also go on outdoor journeys. And so with your favorite presenter, you can go out into these gorgeous red rock sites where you can really feel in to the powerful vortex energy and at the same time enjoy breathtaking views. So our conferences aren't just sitting in an auditorium listening to fascinating presentations, which is amazing, but they also include these indoor workshops and outdoor journeys, as well as a beautiful exhibitor hall. Yes, this venue is magnificent with all glass windows, so you can see the red rocks the whole time you're in the exhibitor hall, and we'll have lots of retail and food vendors. Conscious Meals will be catering, and so it'll be amazing. Come one, come all, and the early bird special goes through December 1st. So make sure to get your tickets now and reserve your seats.
So you get your tickets, if you're just listening to this, at Sedona Ascension Retreats.com. Get your early bird ticket right there. And Suzanne, it's a fantastic.
One more thing, Mark's Light Circle.
Right. Rocky, why don't you explain about the light circles I'll be doing?
Oh, it's fantastic. Mark's Light Circle is an intimate life and life-changing event where only 6 people are in the circle with Mark. Mark is the 7th, which is the magic number 7, and Mark connects your loved ones in spirit. And what happens is the collective consciousness comes in, and the synchronicity and the things that match up with individuals who don't even know each other. There is some sort of it's almost like the magnet of how the spirits come in and have something in relationship to each other. And Mark will give each person in the circle a reading. So it is a most life-changing type of an event, as well as when you walk away, you know your loved ones in spirit are with you. And it's really quite beautiful.
Yeah,
I'm excited. Go ahead, Mark. I'm excited about that.
Oh, that's right. The light circles are very empowering because not only does everybody get a reading, but you're going to see how the collective consciousness works in with each other. Because let's say I'm doing a reading for you, Alan, and then your spirits may start working with Suzanne's spirits, then they're going to work with Rocky's spirits, and they'll bring forth messages of love, healing, and resolution. And it is really such an honor to be able to conduct these light circles, and I will be doing them, facilitating them at the Sedona Ascension Retreat. And once again, through the Sedona Ascension Retreat website, you can sign up for the light circles. So I'm looking forward to it, and this is coming up in March. And everybody, I'd
like to throw something in for all of you watching and participating in this video, this live stream. I want to suggest, when you don't know what to give someone during this holiday season, wow, wouldn't that be great to gift a ticket to the Sedona Ascension Retreat?
Yes. Thank you. Mark, incredible work. Thank you, Rocky, for the support. And Suzanne, always, we just keep putting it out there because we want people to know, to wake up to the essence of who they are and ascend, perhaps. So Suzanne, any closing words from you?
Oh, I just have a personal invitation to all of my beautiful brothers and sisters to come and enjoy this spectacular conference. You'll be glad that you did. It's also just, really being with the spiritual community, your soul brothers and sisters, the very heart-centered, soul-inspired community. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Talk to you soon. Thank you, everyone who's watching online. And